Welcome to brand new edition of the Huddle House. It's me and Ty here tonight. Had a great week to try to recap from last week and want to kind of go over some things from next week. Sorry for missing you guys last week. It's been a real hectic transition for me. Just haven't really been able to coordinate a great time. But how you doing, Ty?
I'm doing good. Matthew looks like he took a few losses and has now been relegated to sleeping on the floor. His life looks like it might be a little bit in shambles there, huh?
Yeah, I feel kind of homeless this last couple of days. I mean, yeah, I have heating, but for those that don't know, I'm moving apartments, and I moved out already, but kind of in that transition phase. So the past couple of days, I've just been making some progress on the old place, sleeping on the floor. So
Looks,
I wasn't gonna let that stop me from doing the show tonight, but I was like, not gonna be the usual setup with the sitting on the chair, kind of elevated. It's gonna be have to be on the floor.
I think it's funny. Like just that look is so funny. Like somebody walked by and happened to look in your window, they'd be like, "Who's this person squatting in this apartment right now?"
Yeah,
uh,
and it's pretty much empty. Like there's nothing in here. Like look, I guarantee you, if I flip it around, I don't really have to, but like still, there's nothing in here. Like
yeah.
it's barren, so it sucks.
When do you actually fully move into your new place?
I did a lot of work on it tonight, getting settled in. It's not completely done, but it's most of the way done. Just kind of wanted to like have my bed set up and like all the general stuff ready to go before I really start like sleeping there. So yeah, just going through a couple days this week.
Well, you're in a period of transition. So is the league in a way. A lot of people 4-3, number nine all the way to number one has a better than 500 record. So things are changing, and it's just feels like this season's been weird, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean it's really weird. Like I think I saw scoring was down like 20% this year. There's a lot more of a gap, I think, between at least at several positions between producers and then just a vast drop off, and like positional value. Like I just actually read a fantasy thread saying that like the difference between Josh Allen at number one QB and Kyler Murray at number six QB is like 10 points a game.
Yeah.
And the difference between Kyler Murray at number QB6 and QB 21 is like only like 4 points a game. So like it's just crazy like how much positional like disparity we're starting to get. And so it just seems like this season's just been like a few guys that have like the haves and everyone else dealing with the have nots, just trying to like pick for scraps to get an 8 point outing out of their skill positions. It's really weird.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy when you put it like that. So I think everybody's trying to feel out, just what, and maybe it'll stay this congested all the way through. I think the points force may come into play more than ever this season.
Yeah,
Um,
and that doesn't favor me at all because my points for suck. They're horrible.
you are at the bottom of the list there, as I said.
Yeah.
But the season's young, my friend. And
Yes.
it's not like you're that crazy far off. I mean, one good week, your guys pop off one week and be right back in it.
Well, I mean, last week I didn't have half my team, and then I mean the week before that I had like a couple major buys. Like, I mean, it's nice. I'm getting all my buys out of the way now. I mean, the only ones I have still are CD and Waddle, but everyone else has had their buys. So like, for the most part, I've kind of gotten a lot of the messiness out of the way, at least for my core players. So
Yeah, the
hopefully it starts, boosting up on me.
buys are hitting this year. But anyhow, let's just dive through. I think we touched on and kind of preview these matches last week. Let's just kind of, I guess, glaze over them and talk about standout performances or anything that caught our attention.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely would love to get into that. So let's start kind of go through last week. Let's start off with James and Jordan. Jordan gets his first L of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice win for James there. Um, Starting Davis Mills too. He kind of had to roll with the backup quarterback. He got pretty lucky with that Kareem Hunt touchdown. Kareem only had 5 carries for 4 yards, and one of them happened to be a 2 yard score. So that was a pretty that's a 6 point swing right there. This game could have looked a lot different had that not happened. Um, And other than that, I mean, I think that, this was eventually coming a loss to Jordan, and James just put up a good number. Jordan had a few injuries, obviously with Hollywood Brown and everything, but ultimately a very important win for James. I think he's won two straight now. He's in the 4-3 contention, looking pretty strong with
Yeah,
McCaffrey on a new team.
I know things are looking up. And one thing that's nice about James's team is looking at like just his whole body of work and like his lineup obviously was pretty solid last week that he rostered, but he had Christian Kirk dropping, almost 14 and Terry McLaurin dropping almost 16 off the bench. Like those are two guys that most teams would probably be starting. So he's got a little bit of depth there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So I mean,
no doubt.
overall pretty good performance from James. But I mean 112 is never shabby. I mean, especially with a team that, didn't have Kirk Cousins and had to roll with Davis Mills, but I mean he got a good performance out of Davis Mills. I mean, 302 yards, two tutties, like that's not bad.
That's called playing the Raiders defense.
Yeah, exactly. And Zeke's not going to scamper in for two touchdowns very often, so
Mm-hmm.
that was pretty fortunate for him. But
Uh,
yeah,
in there, yeah, saw that one coming. Next one on my screen is Marcus and Mitri.
yeah. I
Mar-
mean,
Marcus was very, very worried that Mitri was going to beat him, and he got off to a great start with Eno Benjamin, the 21 points on Thursday night. But Marcus, talent won out there in the end. But I think the story that overshadows any performance is the Brees Hall ACL, and that's really all that needs to be said about that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say. I mean, it's horrible. I don't think anyone, really feels good about that. It's you never want to see talented guys like that go down.
Yeah,
What?
no one, yeah, nobody feels good about that. You got that
Yeah.
right. Maybe Michael Carter's mom, because he'll get the blame. That's about it. Like no one feels.
Yeah. It's a tough situation. I know I was just stating the obvious there, but like it just sucks, I mean, Marcus has always been very unlucky in fantasy. And this year, man, his team's been balling out. He's had probably, I think, undoubtedly the best team, him and Jordan, this whole season. And Marcus's points for is like on a different level. So, I mean, he's had a great team performance this year. So to lose Javante and Brees, I mean, I know he watches the huddle last weekly and probably doesn't even want to hear it reminded to him. So we can go ahead and move on. But, it's just, it's tough, It's tough. There's no real way to butter that up. It's just a sucky situation.
He might have found something with Raheem Mostert though. Raheem Mostert's looking like the guy in that backfield as a nice 1 year, maybe two rental. But anyhow, yeah, we can move on to the next one here.
Oh yeah, and real quick, he also ran into Deonta Foreman with the CMC trade, so it's pretty fortunate too. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to put up what he put up last week every week because that seemed a little bit like an outlier, but I still think he's probably good for 8 to 12 points most weeks. I mean that's you can work with it. So
Yeah, he's a body that'll have opportunity, and
yeah,
that's the best you can ask for at running back.
yeah. So I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Definitely one of those W's that probably feels like an L for Marcus last week.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Now we're looking at Lucas and Carter.
oh yeah, yeah.
I think one thing we really have to mention with this matchup is that we are seeing a Josh Jacobs resurgence this season. I mean, is that not something that any of us predicted? I mean, he's averaging 22 points a game. Like,
It's the contract year, baby.
I mean, he's begging. I mean, his last 3 weeks, he's put up 32, 28, and 35.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, goodness gracious. Like, man is on a straight up tear right now.
Yeah, and he's got a soft back half of this schedule here too, coming down the pike. Like weeks 9 through 13 are pretty soft, so that's bodes well for Lucas's playoff push. That's for sure. He definitely has a roster that can compete for it and get there. So, and it's setting up nicely. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think a really good week for him. Carter just kind of again is in this state of waiting on Deshaun Watson, kind of like the Browns' actual organization. His fate feels very much tied to theirs. Did make the trade to get Brady for next to nothing. Thought that was a really good move for him because at 3-4, he's not out of this by any means. And I think Brady is only going to get better. Like, if you can usually bank on anybody to figure something out, it's going to be Brady. So, I mean, I know he's been terrible this year, but I think a third round pick for a guy that can stabilize your quarterback position, I think it was a really good move, especially,
Yeah.
with it come with the news of Matt Ryan's benching. It was very serendipitous in that way, I thought.
Yeah, for sure. Gosh, if you want any guy on Jake's team, just offer him thirds. I mean, it gets the job done. I mean, I like it for Carter. I mean, Jake's just trying to get any draft capital he could possibly get his hands on. So,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I mean, I don't think anyone else in the league really values thirds. So we'll see if that strategy works out for him. He's got like 7 of them, but that's about it in regards to his draft capital. So
Speaking of Jake, he was probably involved in the game of the weekend here with Caleb. Took it down to the wire, 142 to 136. Just an incredibly high scoring game. Very tough loss for Jake to suffer, though.
yeah, I mean, I would say I feel sorry for Jake, but I can't ever do that. I don't think I really have it in me. But I will have to admit, looking at this guy's season, he's had some really bad breaks. Like, I mean, I will admit, like, he loses by point 12 to Jordan. Uh, he loses. Uh, I mean, I think that's probably about it. And then this week, I mean, those are really the only 2 losses that he like, barely lost. But still, I mean, you switch those 2 around, he's 4-3 with the rest of us, and he'd probably be one of the highest on the points for just because of these boom weeks he's had. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
not many guys in the league can say they've dropped 152, 147, and 136 in the same season. So these boom weeks have really made it to where like it seems one of the higher scoring teams. So you turn those 2 into wins, and he's probably, you know, 4 or 5 seed right now. So he's had a few bad breaks. I'll definitely give him that, but 2-5 is 2-5, so it is what it is.
Yeah, his team can definitely boom. I think that's just proof of it. They went crazy, and still, this is a terrible week to be facing Caleb, whose team also went crazy with Juju Smith-Schuster's resurgence here. He's had a couple of really good weeks back to back, and then obviously Mahomes, doing his thing. But then Kenneth Walker, I think I mentioned it when we were talking about rankings or something. I was like, yeah, we just haven't seen anything. And that was definitely a premature take because he's looked really impressive these past couple weeks when he's gotten hold of that backfield. Just some explosive speed, ability to just break off a long one, some great vision. So I think he's going to be a core piece of his team for years to come. So a lot to be encouraged by for Caleb's team. I mean, he's 5-2.
Yeah. You want to know something really? This is very indicative of this season. I'm looking at Kenny Walker right now just to see what he's done these last, this season really, just as a whole. This is indicative of just how weird this season's been. Kenneth Walker put up about 10 points combined in his first 4 weeks and is still sitting at RB 20 on the season.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
that's a mid-tier RB2. And in 4 of the weeks, he was averaging 2.5 points. Like,
yeah, you're 100% right.
I mean, that's bizarre, like that guys can just, I mean, it just shows how the scoring's been this year. There's just hasn't been that many people producing. And so it's just so weird. If you can stumble upon someone that is, you're going to win some matchups. But, like, it's just the scoring is down. Like, last year, it seemed like someone was putting up 145 every single week. This year, it's like maybe one guy is, maybe. And then everyone else is like lucky to scratch 110. It's just, there's just not that dynamic, like boom performance as much.
And I think what's really helped Caleb too, that probably doesn't get talked about enough is his defense, man. The Cowboys defense is averaging 12 points a game. Like that has been some of those boom weeks he's had where he's pulled out wins. It's been because they've gone for 21 or 18. Like they've been fantastic. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way a defense can swing a game and swing a season in a way. So a barn burner there, but on to something that was anything but Jeremy and Chris. Um, Jeremy nearly tripled Chris's points. of 45. He was about like 20 something points away from tripling his score.
Uh, yeah.
Is there said?
We need to talk about this one.
What is there
Chris's
said?
Chris's running back duo combined put up 2.8.
Yeah, it hurts, man. It really hurts, especially knowing he has two Ferraris in that lineup, and Drake
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts, and
Yeah.
they got a total of 6 targets between them for
Yeah.
18 total yards. Like it's just got to be tough, man. I mean, uh, yeah,
Chris is just begging for Bryce Young or CJ Stroud to get drafted by the Falcons next year. He's like, please, just get a quarterback.
the good news is sober October is almost over, so.
Yeah. The Land Sharks are back, baby.
And
He's
on Jeremy's side, you just got a Burrow boom week. He played amazing, and everybody else on his team was kind of down, other than Ramondre, who showed up. Mainly because of his 8 receptions for 59 yards. That was a
yeah.
boost. So that's really all in that one. We'll go back up to ours. I guess
The one thing I will mention here is Jeremy had very, very good fortune with getting to face Chris on the week where he had like almost all his buys. I mean, not all of them, but a good chunk of them. He had no AJ Brown this week. He had no Miles Sanders. He didn't have his tight end Smith. So like he didn't have his defense. So like that was his backup defense. Never mind. But still, he didn't have 3 or 4 of his guys that are like key pieces of his lineup. So the fact that he can kind of get those buys out of the way without really having that much of a threat of losing, like that's a nice break. I mean, it's not. I mean, that's how fantasy rolls. Sometimes you get kind of fortunate like that. I'm fortunate to play you this week with no Travis Kelce. So,
Mhm.
it's how the cookie crumbles. So, nothing against it. It's just like he definitely got a nice situation kind of going into the rest of the season with a little bit less buys on his important guys without really walking out with an L.
Well, I think that perfectly leads into yours and Brandon's game if you're talking about people on buys, because you both were each playing a little handicapped. He was without uh, his Bills, and you were without your Rams, and those are both huge. That's your all's batteries, man. Your Stafford to Cup and his Allen to Diggs. You guys were both playing down a little bit there, and obviously you were without Dalvin as well, which was another significant blow. So just kind of a battle of two giants that were, they were fighting on their knees, and Brandon ended up coming out on top. But it wasn't a sexy game, that's for sure.
It was a miserable one, and I mean, the only thing that made it a little better is I was just so busy that day. Like I normally am like in my seat, watching 8 hours of commercial-free football on Red Zone, but like this week, with like I said, all the limbo going on in my life, like I just kind of had to keep up with it on my phone. And honestly, I think it made the pain a little bit less because I just kind of check sleeper every 15, 20 minutes, see that I'm sucking, and then just go back to doing what I was doing. Rather than having to like waterboard myself watching Red Zone and seeing my guys do nothing. Like it would have been a little bit more taxing, but just kind of having to just see it on my cell phone. It's not
Well,
as
that's how you do it. You'll check every 15 minutes or so.
I mean, this week I kind of had to. No, whenever I'm watching at home or on the TV, like having Red Zone up, I'll have Fantasy Cast up on my computer.
Oh, so you're
I'll be
watching
like,
really point by point. I can't do that, man.
I
I
do.
I never check the scores on Sunday until like maybe I'll check it once after the 1 o'clock games. If I'm real anxious, I just won't until like the Sunday night. Something I never check it because I don't like being anxious about it.
I like to torture myself, Ty.
I like to
I
know.
live,
I
I
like
live on high
just
stress.
I like to have like some kind of general idea in my head. Like I'll know the players that the guy I'm playing has and that I'll have. And if I see scores come down, it'll like, kind of build up in my head either one way or the other. And most times I'm thinking like, yeah, I'm getting beat. So when I check it and I'm winning, it's like, oh, that feels good. That way I'm not like, thinking
Yeah, but
about
what
it.
about when it's the other way around? What if you think you're winning and then you pull it up and you're not? Then it
I never think I'm winning. So
becomes
that's never a problem. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
there wasn't much to take away from my team. I mean, we sucked. But I mean, my lineup was just absolutely putrid this week. I mean, I didn't have much in there. It's just like even though I thought I had some good matchups with CD against Detroit, who's been allowing about 5,000 receiving yards a game, and then CD goes out and does little to nothing. And Waddle against Pittsburgh, who the week before had allowed, I think a big Mike Evans and pretty decent Godwin week. I'm thinking like, okay, Waddle's probably gonna go off too, and he didn't really do a whole lot. So it was just kind of a dud week in general. I mean, none of my guys really came to play. I mean, Derek was fine, but even for his standards, that's just kind of an okay game.
Goodness.
So I mean, it just happens. If there was one week I wanted to lay a dud, it'd probably be this one since I was so depleted anyway. But if I start Gus Edwards, I'll win the week.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot, Marcus. No, I'm just kidding. It's my choice, but I did text Marcus like that morning and was like, I know it's not any of your business, and you don't. I'm gonna make my own decision regardless. But if it were you, would you start Edwards or Huntley? Just because I was torn about it. I wanted a second opinion. He's like, dude, you can't trust Edwards. He just got activated yesterday. So I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. Huntley has the better floor. So I start Huntley just to have the better floor, and then Edwards does that, and it's just
Wow.
dagger in the heart. I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, Marcus.
So you're blaming him, but really, I feel like you're just indicting yourself a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I am. No, I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have outsourced my questions. But you guys can't judge me because I've literally taken roster advice from a couple of y'all on Sunday mornings. Just looking at Lucas.
Just one quick note about Brandon's team because he got stronger this week, not making any roster moves, and not just one way, in two ways.
Sounds like Brandon.
Because James Robinson goes to the Jets, which is probably going to take over the early down back role, and that frees up ETN also on his team to have sole possession of that Jacksonville backfield. So he just got strong. He took what was essentially like a running back and a half, or like one backfield, and made it two. Like it was a beautiful weekend for him, probably.
Yeah, it sucks. Good for him, sure, but yeah, I mean, and that's part of the game. But yeah, it's pretty unfortunate for the rest of us uh, peasants. Are trying to scrap at his heels to be the favorites in this league, and then he goes and gets better by doing absolutely nothing. It's just
It's a
it,
good.
it it's a heartbreak. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous.
Well, just to keep us moving here to my matchup, I pulled out a win over Austin. Really not because I played great by any means, just because his team got hurt and kind of laid duds. Like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mark Andrews combined for 1.3 points. He got a lot of duds on his team. The only reason he really even put up the number he did, 17, was because the Titans defense gave him 19. So it just continues to be a season of like frustration. Has to be frustration for Austin because he has good players. Like, he has good
Yeah.
players. It just is not working, coming together. I don't understand. So yeah, just survived and picked up a win. That was really all that mattered. Um, would love to have a defense not leave me in the negatives for a week. That would be just a delight, but it has not happened in a little while, it feels like.
Petition to scrap kickers and defenses. I would probably vote yes.
Yeah, I think I gave my answer in that statement too. But let's just transition over. We'll preview next week real quick and hit on some of the matchups because there are some interesting ones. I think that there's, like we said earlier, a lot of teams that are kind of congested at this 4-3, floating near 500, 1-9, and this is going to be a week where some people move. I guess we'll get the obvious ones out of the way first. James plays Chris. James has a nice draw here with his 4-3 record. He's going to avoid, has a nice chance to jump up to 5-3 here and kind of avoid that scrum. This one seems like an obvious pick.
Going with Chris. No, I'm just. I really am. I'm rooting for Chris to win one game. I mean, I don't know though. Then again, I'm kind of in a way sort of not because I think I'd rather just for the sake of Lucas not being really annoying all offseason. I really don't want him to get the number one pick, and he has Mitris. So I think for sake of roster balance, I think I'd rather Mitri have the number one pick. So
Yeah,
I might be rooting for Chris to finish worse in the league.
yeah. So yeah, that one seems obvious. Another one that might be teetering on that line is Jordan versus Austin. 6-1 versus 1-6. How do we feel here? PJ Walker in at quarterback for Austin, not Herbert, who's on bye.
I mean, you definitely have to think Austin for sure, or Jordan for sure, no doubt. But I mean, I am looking at just situationally for Austin, or I keep saying Austin, Jordan. You have J.D. McKissick starting because Cordero's still on IR, and I mean, has he been starting McKissick, or am I missing something?
He started him last week, I think.
Yeah, I mean, since Hollywood went on IR, he's been starting McKissick.
Right,
I mean,
and
that's not
so
going to give you very much.
Jarvis has been hurt.
Judy has a 9:30 a.m. London game, and I don't think those games are ever good for fantasy, especially with Russell Wilson the way he's playing right now. Like, I mean, they're saying it's a favorable matchup against Jacksonville, but I don't really know. Like, it could easily be a dud week from Judy. You have Aaron Jones rushing against Buffalo's really stout run defense. So I mean, there's some hope for Austin here. I know that PJ Walker is not the most inspiring, but like you got Amon Ra. If he plays playing against Miami, that game could be a shootout, possibly. Two pretty high scoring teams. But I mean, Austin's gonna have to start Elijah Moore. Like, is he even gonna play?
Who knows what's going on with that whole situation? I do
I mean,
think
talk about a sophomore drop off. Like Elijah Moore, like the dude last year. That's been one of the biggest kickers to Austin. Is Elijah Moore has been like absolutely non-existent.
well, there's been a few of those. Like him, AJ Dillon's done nothing this year. Najee Harris has done really nothing this year. Like a lot of his guys who were really good last year as young players have really just slumped this season.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a frustrating. I do think he has a lot of bounce back potential, and I could see this being an upset, especially because I think Mark Andrews is going to have a good game tomorrow. I think he's going to bounce back. So I hate to say it, but I'm tempted to go Austin here in an upset.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it because I mean, right now Jordan has Russell Gage in the lineup. Obviously, he's going to take him out, but still, Jarvis Landry might not play. James Cook doesn't really do anything. So I'm looking at Jordan's bench and I'm like, who's he going to start? Cameron Braid's out. Aguilar is not much. Like, he might be having to start, Shakir from Buffalo, in that second flex spot. So I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, Jordan's roster is not good this week. I mean, let's just put it this way. So like
Your
it
pick?
it could be an easily like whoever wins in the 80s. Like it could be that type of week.
Who?
I'm gonna go Austin. I'm gonna go Austin on the upset.
Okay. Moving on then. What's our next one? Oh, here we go. Jake at 2-5 versus Mitri at 1-6. The Tom Brady lists Power Scrubs Incorporated, led by Danny Dimes. Latavius Murray is his RB1.
Oh gosh.
Eckler's on bye. And he lost DK Metcalf and Mike Williams. Obviously, Mike Williams on bye, but also injured.
That's tough. These rosters are looking rough. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna go with Jake just because I think Mike Evans could potentially go off tomorrow, and Thielen has a decent floor. Latavius is the lead back. I mean, not in a good offense, but still lead back. Robinson gets a decent workload. So I mean, I'm still gonna go Jake in a squeak out. But this could be a win for Mitri, man. Like this one is not out of question. Like I think every other week we look at Mitri as like just a bye week, pretty much. Like, oh, it's gonna be an L for Mitri. This week, with the way Jake's roster looks, I'm like, I don't know, man. This like Mitri could pull this one out. Like the way Algier's workload's been going up, playing against the putrid Carolina team, like Algier might get in the end zone once or twice. Looked good last week. Dak Prescott playing Chicago, like that could be pretty nice. So I'm looking at his team like Wandale showed some promise. I'm like, dude, Mitri could win this. Like
Yeah, no, he
it's
could.
it's
I'm
not
not.
out of the question.
I'm not picking him though. I'm going Jake.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go Jake just to not like get too ballsy, but like I'm just saying, like this is a week where Jake is like it's a trap game. Like Marcus was calling me a trap game last week, and I kept telling him like, dude, you're gonna find a way to win. But like he was calling it a trap game. This week, I might actually agree. Like it actually might be a trap game. Like this is losable. Like Jake might need to be nervous. I'm gonna go Jake just because I mean I think his team's still better, but You know, Mitri, Mitri might be nipping at the heels this week though.
Next up, Caleb versus Brandon. Brandon, both 5-2 teams, but
Yeah, but
Caleb is without his Chiefs, so he's down Mahomes, he's down CEH, and he's down Juju. So he's starting Taylor Heineke.
hey, you know who got to face a lot of buys last week?
Brandon,
You know who gets to face a lot of buys this week?
again, he does.
Freaking lucky, man. Like, I mean, I'm not. I sound like a real bitter right now. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty freaking annoying though. Like, I'm not saying Caleb would have won anyway. I'm gonna go Brandon here. I'm not saying that, but like the way the Chiefs have been balling out, like it probably could have been a shootout. Very well could have. But he catches them on a week where it's Taylor Heineke and having to start Tyquan Thornton. Like, it's Brandon all day long.
Yeah, it's Brandon here. And man, I'm just realizing we got some good primetime games this week. Like Ravens and Bucks, I think that'll be a solid game. Sunday is the Packers and Bills. That like traditionally is a good game. Monday, Bengals and Browns. Like there's some good fantasy relevant primetime games, and there has not been that the past few weeks. It's been some just like stinkers where there'll be like one or two guys on the field that have fantasy implications, but there'll be a ton of them this week. That'll be fun. Um,
Yeah.
going Brandon as well though. He's got his Bengals. He's got his Bills. Uh, will be something to watch with Michael Pittman, how Sam Ellinger does getting him the ball.
Yeah. A lot of times those backup QBs like they kind of come in and like they're just sort of like green. They don't have a ton of reps. Like they just kind of force feed their best player. So
Mm,
it might not be like the best targets, but like it could just be a lot of targets. Like just like Pittman's out there somewhere. Like it's just kind of like the safest bet.
right.
So it could actually be kind of nice for Pittman to be honest. I mean, it can't get worse than Matt Ryan was playing.
Yeah, as they saw him target Paris Campbell like 11 times and were like, yeah, straight to the bench. Or whatever
Yeah.
happened. Uh
We're looking at Jeremy and Carter. Looking at the matchups here.
hmm.
I mean, Saquon versus Seattle could be real nice for Carter, but I'm just looking at the rest of his matchups. I mean, Henderson versus San Francisco, don't love it. Uh, Lockett against the Giants, not a huge fan. Like, you know, Carter's got some okay matchups and can definitely make this a matchup or like a competitive game, but I'm gonna go Jeremy to keep the ball rolling. I think Ramondre does good against the Jets.
Mhm.
Really like Burrow in a primetime game, to play really well again. And Tyreek Hill against Detroit might go for 30. So
This
yeah.
one would be the game that has the biggest implications, honestly, because this would be a really, really big win for Jeremy and it'd be a really, really bad loss for Carter and their playoff hopes. Because not just playoff hopes for Jeremy if he wins, but like first round bye hopes. Because going to 6-2 would be a really good spot. And if Carter falls to 3-5, that's a really tough spot too. So both teams have a lot of reason to want this. But I think I'm with you. I lean Jeremy here. Burrow's been hot lately. I think AJ Brown's got a good matchup versus Pittsburgh, and Ramondre has really been looking good. So I'm gonna roll with Jeremy in this one and to stay hot.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at Marcus and Lucas.
Oh, this is another big one.
Yeah. And these are the types that, shift the playoff picture. So, I mean, I'm looking at Marcus here. I'm looking at some really solid matchups. I mean, Lamar versus Tampa, I mean, that's a pretty good defense for the most part, but I'm looking at Jefferson versus Arizona, should be great. Looking at Mostert versus Detroit, probably a high scoring game, very, very solid matchup.
Yeah,
Cortland versus Jacksonville. I mean, granted, it is in London and it is Russell Wilson, but still think that could be a pretty good matchup. Over on Lucas is in. I mean, Hurts is steady as a rock. But Jacobs against at the Saints, they're sometimes hard to play against and run against in their place. So not as great of a matchup. David Montgomery's probably gonna get stifled by Dallas
mm.
in Jerry World. So, you know, it's a tough one. I mean, I see some good matchups on Lucas's end, but I'm gonna go Marcus.
Going Marcus in this one. It really does feel like it's It's almost like a pick 'em, man.
This one is a pick 'em.
Similar quarterback situations. I think Hurts has just been hotter. Lamar's been kind of struggling a little bit. So
Yes.
I expect this Tampa Bay game to be kind of like low scoring. Uh, Maybe he'll do a lot with his feet. Singletary versus Green Bay, there's solid opportunity there, but Singletary's his upside's just kind of limited. A lot Mostert love that matchup. He's going to feast. I think you're all over it there. I do feel like it's going to be a T. Higgins game on Monday night. I feel like he's due, so I think he's going to get some good production there. And Josh Jacobs has been just hot as a match lately. I'm kind of torn on this one, but I think I'm going to go with Lucas because I like Jalen Hurts a little bit better than Lamar this week. I think he's going to be running downhill, and as good as Dallas's defense is, and as much as I think Montgomery's going to be out of the game, I think Lucas is going to get more from his wide receivers and flexes as a collective whole, even though Jefferson is far and away the best player and will probably score the most individual points. So I'm going to roll with Lucas in this one.
All right. Going into the last one, obviously we're going to disagree on this one. I think we kind of have to by default. I'm not going to pick,
Easy.
you're not going to pick me. But let's just kind of break down the matchups a little bit.
Sure. Well, I think I'm leaning towards starting Jared Goff here. So I think we might be very locked into that Sunday 1 o'clock Detroit Miami game because we're both going to have the quarterbacks. And as it stands right now, we both have the London defenses. So like we're going to want no points in that game. We're going to want all the points at 1 o'clock. That's going to be interesting to be on opposite sides of the coin there.
Yeah. I actually just noticed that will be interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
So
looking
obviously,
at my,
just for
you know,
me, I want to say one thing here about probably the biggest change to my roster is no Kelsey. Right
yeah,
now, I'm pretty set to roll with Cade Otton on the Bucks. I think that given Cameron Brate's injury, he put up some solid numbers last week, and I'm of the opinion that Brady's going to get this thing figured out and right the ship, like he always has done. I know it doesn't really not his he hadn't shown much this season to lend that type of confidence. But even if that doesn't necessarily come this game, I think he's showing a lot of ability to hit his tight ends. So I'm liking Kate Otten this week, and we'll see what happens. I had a good feeling about him earlier.
yeah, no, there's definitely some matchups on your side that scare me. I think um, Taylor's bound for a bounce back week, and it would only be poetic justice for it to happen against me.
Not even a
So
bounce,
I'm fully
bounce back.
expecting it.
Not even a bounce back week. Just a week like himself, man. Like
Yeah,
like about one bounce back week doesn't make up for like the 7 or 8 weeks it's been this way now. But like at least just look, he could look like he did. That would be poetic, though. I hadn't thought about that. That'd be funny. And with Ellinger, you'd think they're going to be pounding that rock with Sam.
oh, trust me, you have nothing to lose sleep about. It's gonna happen. It's not a question mark. It's gonna happen. He might drop 30 on my head. I'm fully expecting it. Jamal Williams, probably a pretty good matchup. So I got some things to worry about, but what I am happy about is I do think Tua could be pretty high scoring this week, and Derrick Henry against Houston, like that's always nice. So I'm expecting a big game from Derrick. Um,
I should get Swift back this weekend, or actually, he had a full day of practicing, so I should be able to slot him back in finally.
yeah,
Been waiting on him for a while too.
that'll definitely help you. I'm finally able to semi confidently start Schultz. I don't really like it, but like Dak actually targets him, unlike Cooper Rush. So
Hmm.
he kind of looked like himself a little bit this past week. So I'm gonna give him another shot. He'll probably break my heart again, but we're gonna give him another chance. But yeah, we got about 20 seconds, man. But I'm obviously gonna roll myself, but should be a good one. It's a much important week for both of us.
Yeah, man. 4-3. We both need it. May the better man win. And everybody
Yep.
have a good weekend.
Yep. See you guys.